So imagine, you're trying to learn machine learning, and in order to do that, you would need your own machine which has a high computational power. You would need some process how you can train your model, and that's where, the Azure Machine Learning will help you out. So this basically is a cloud-based service provided by Microsoft Azure that enables developers and data scientists to build, deploy, and manage machine learning models. So this is how it basically helps you. You can imagine that, you would create your own workspace. And once you create your workspace, this workspace offers you ways you can train your model, create your model. You can use your pipelines to run your jobs. You can deploy machines where you can test your models and where you can deploy your models. And it also allows you to basically, in the deployment process, you can create your own data sources and you can create your experiments. Experiments is nothing but, when you basically run your own jobs. So today, what we'll do is basically walk you through how you can create your uh, Azure Machine Learning lab, the workspace, and how you can do all these things. So the first thing that we are going to look at is how you can create your Azure Machine Learning workspace. So let's start with, navigate to your portal.azure.com, log in with your ID, and then search for Azure Machine. So once you do that, you would get this option with this particular symbol, so you can select that. And right now you can see I don't have any resources or any workspace here. So what I can do is basically create my new workspace. All right. So the first thing that you have to do is basically select your subscription. Since I have only one subscription, I'm going to go with the Azure Test subscription. And then you can create your own resource group. Or if you have an existing resource group, you can select that. But I don't have anything right now. So I'm going to create a new one. And I'm going to name it as Machine Learning 101. Copy this. So once you do that, then you have to provide the workspace details. That means that the name and the region it's going to be in. So name, let's say, we'll keep the same name, which is Machine Learning 101. And along with, the workspace details, there are a couple of other resources that are created. So one thing that you should understand is that, creating the workspace itself is free, but the underlying resources which are provisioned along with it is the one which is going to incur charges. So you can think about, the storage account where you can store all your blobs, files, and everything. The key vault where you can store all your secrets. The application insights is mainly used for monitoring it, monitoring if there is anything, or creating the logs, monitoring it, like if something is going wrong or what's happening behind the scene, right? And then you have the container registry. So once you know uh, create your model. So basically, you get in your own data or you use the sample data that is already available, clean the data, transform the data, train your model using one of the, you know, uh, let's say regression methods or some other methods, you'll be using to train your model. So once you are going to, deploy them, you will be deploying them using one of the computational service, and that creates a particular image, and the image is is being stored in the container registry. So that's the reason this container registry is being created. So let's create, so you can see the other resources, the name is already assigned, but for the container registry there is nothing, so we have to provide a new name here. So we'll do that. We'll leave it. Okay. Okay. So yeah, this one is available. I'll leave this SKU as standard, and then save this. Okay, next networking. I'll leave the networking isolation as public. Go to next for encryption. I'll leave everything as is, and then I'll go to identity. I'm not going to change anything here, and then go to tags. Okay, nothing to add here. Go to review and create. Once the validation is passed, you can hit create. This probably would take around 2 to 3 minutes. Let's wait for the deployment to finish. All right, so the deployment is completed. Now we can go to the resource. And once, this is the machine learning 101, which we just created, the workspace. So once you are here, you go to your overview, and the first thing that you have to do is basically launch your studio. So once you launch your studio, this is basically the workspace that is going to load for you. And this is how or what will help you in building your model, training your model, and, deploying your model. You can look at your jobs. So you can see right now my workspace is open. So you can see, you have the designer here, the prompt flow, you have the data, the jobs, components, pipelines, environments, models, endpoints, compute. So what we'll do is basically we'll walk through each of them one by one, and we'll see how each other, how it will work with respect to each other. So the first thing that you have to look at is the designer. So designer is the one which basically gives you an empty canvas to, help you with creating your own or creating your own model, training your model. So so what we have to do is basically, if we look at the uh, create a pipeline here, you can click create a new pipeline, and you can name this. So probably we'll name it machine learning test. Right, and we'll save this. So once you do that, once I have basically created my pipeline, you can see there is a data, tab here, which is where you can get in your own data, and you can use it in this canvas, and then, you can play around with it. And the other one is basically the component. The component is the one where you have, you know, all the codes which is going to run in behind the scene or behind this is listed down here, or all the functions, features, everything is basically available here. And along with that, you also have the sample data which is provided by Azure itself. So you can check this one which says sample data. So there are 16 sample data which are provided here. So you can, pick any one of them, and you can play around with that. So let's say we'll pick the one which has the adult census income binary classification dataset. So this is a data set which will basically help you predict whether an individual is earning more than 50K or less than 50K based on, some of the labels or features which are there. So, so in order to, get started, what you have to do is just click on this, drag and drop it to the canvas, and just drop it there. And the other thing what you can do is basically right click on this and then preview data. So this will show you, what is there underneath, uh, the sample data that is being provided to you. So you can see there are almost around 32,561 rows, and there are 15 columns. And these 15 columns, will provide you with, for if you click on them, it will provide you with further details. So if we, let's click on education. So since this is a string feature, That's the reason the mean, meridian, min, and max is not there. This is only available for numeric feature. And you can see it has 16 unique values and there are no missing values. So in order to train your model, you should have to ensure that the data which is provided or which you are providing, the raw data, should not have any missing values. So right now we can see all the values are there. So this is good. And if we look at the other one, which is basically the age, yeah, so now you can see the feature type is a numeric feature, and that's the reason we have the mean, meridian, min, and the max. So minimum is basically we have the minimum age of a person is 70 and the maximum age of a person is 90. And there are 73 unique values with zero missing values. So this is really important for us. And this is what we are going to basically predict, whether the income of that person is less than 50K or more than 50K. So let's start with that. I'll close this. So first we have taken a sample data set. Now, in order to train your model, what you have to do is basically split your data into, split your data so that you can use some, let's say 70% of the data to train your model, and then you can use the 30% of the data to test your model, to evaluate your model whether it's working exactly how you intend to do it or not. So let's search for it. What you can do is basically you can use the split. You can search for split. So it will give you the option here, and you can drag and drop in the canvas. You can connect the data set, and you can see it is providing two data set here. And once you double click on it, it'll basically show you how you want to split the data. What is the percentage of resultant set that should go in one, and the percentage that should go in the other one. So since we mentioned it as 70%, let's make it as 0.7. Save this. So the 70% of the data would go in results data set 1, and the 30% would go in the result data set 2. So once we execute this, you would be able to see the sample data, which is the split sample data. So let's actually do that. What we'll do is, in order for us to run this experiment, or you can say run this pipeline, we need a computational resource. So we basically need a VM, where it can download this job and it can run it and show us the result. So in order to do that, you have to create one of the computational resource. And to do that, just click, scroll down. Under the manage section, there is a compute resource here. And what you can do is basically you have a couple of options which are provided here. So if you're using it only for testing purpose, you can use, only one instance. If it's meant for production purpose, or if you want to, have more computational power, you can use a cluster. But right now, since we are just testing it, we'll use the compute instance. So I'll click on new, and I'll mention this as okay. And you can see, the size of the virtual machine which is going to be provided to you. So you can see the available quota is 6 cores, the cost of the machine, what is the RAM, what is the storage which is being provided. So these are some of the in recommended options that is provided to you, but you can choose your own options. So once you go to select from all options, you have other options which are listed down there. So you can look at the one which you need based on what you are trying to do or what you're trying to achieve, because this training your model is a complex process, and you need the machine should be capable of running the code, and it should be able to do all these things in the backend. So since we are just testing it out, I'm going to select the lowest one which is provided here. Probably I'll select something which is okay. Let's take this one and go to next. And then you can, like if you are not using your VM, so you can schedule an auto shutdown, which will shut down the machine if it's been idle for 60 minutes. You can go next. I'm not going to select any of the security measures here. Go to next. Nothing in the applications. Next. Nothing in the tags. Next. And then create. So right now, the virtual machine is getting provisioned, getting created in the backend. So once this is done, what we'll do is basically we'll go back to the designer and go back to the pipeline, and we'll try to execute it, whatever job we have built till now. So our computational resource has been created. You can see it's in the running phase now, or running state now. So what we'll do is basically go back to the pipeline that we were working on. Sorry, let me go back to the designer that we were working on. And if you scroll down, you can look at this is the draft one pipeline that we are working on. So we'll select that. And the next thing that we are going to do is basically run this to see, what's there in the result data set 1 and the result data set 2. So what you have to do is basically click here, which is configure and submit. And then this is, what is known as an experiment. So when you are basically running a job in the pipeline, that is known as an experiment. So you can select either an existing one or you can create a new one. Since this is the first time that we are doing this, we have to create a new one. And you can name your experiment as experiment 1, and then click on next. And now you would select the computational resource which you just provisioned a while ago. So let's go to compute instance. And this is the one which we just provisioned. So we'll select that. And it'll use the data store, which we created or we uh, initially when we were provisioning the workspace. So that's the, blob space or the blob store that it is using. And let's go to next. So this will basically, here you can review all your settings, what you have done, and you can hit on submit. So this, the backend, what it's going to do is basically download all the things that you have done here. That means, your sample data, and you're trying to split your data. So at the backend, it's going to basically submit that job. And once that is done, it'll show us the result. So right now you can see it's getting it, it's executing. All right, so our job is now completed. And if we right click on this, if we go to preview data, you can see there are two result sets here or two data sets here. So if we look at the first data set, this is what would have or contain 70% of the data. So you can see, there are 22,793 rows here. So we'll close this and then we'll go to the second data set. And this contains 9,768 rows. So now we know that, the sample data that we have taken has been split into two parts, which is 70% and 30%. So the next thing that we are going to use or do is basically train our model with the 70% of the data using one of the algorithms, which is, provided by this machine learning itself. So let's see, let's close this. Let's go back. So since we have split our data into two components, which is 70% and 30%. So the 70% would be used to train your model, and the 30% is how you will test your model, whether it's working or not. So what we'll do next is basically search for train model. And drop it here. We'll use the result data set 1 to train the model, and we'll use one of the algorithms to train the model. So we'll use the linear algorithm, regression algorithm here, and we'll use that to train our model. All right. So once this is done, what you have to do is basically you have to specify, the label on which it should basically the output that we should get on. So that would be the income. Save this. Save this. Okay. Now we have to score our model. So we'll use the train model here. We'll use the rest of the data set in this 30% data set, and then we'll evaluate model. So we'll go here. We'll go set. Save this. And once you do that, you can configure and submit. Since we have already configured everything, the computational resource and everything, it's just showing a review, but you can go back and configure everything once again. Now let's submit this. Let's go back to the jobs. So in order to see the jobs which has been submitted, you can go to the workspace again. Under the assets you have the jobs here, and you can see this is the experiment that we are running. So under this experiment there will be like various jobs which we are trying to execute. So you can see this is the one which we ran and completed successfully. Now we are running this one, and let's see what's happening over there. Okay, so you can see the split is done. Now it's trying to train the model. Okay, and once that is done, it will try to score the model, and then we'll evaluate the result. So finally, our job is completed, and you can view the result by right-clicking on it, preview data, and the evaluation result. And this is what we get. So this is, what is basically based on the kind of algorithm that you're using, you will get the result set that way. So let's say, I'll do one thing. I'll go back. We'll remove the linear regression, and we'll use another one, which is to class logistics regression here. And now you'll see how the data changes or how the evaluation changes now. So we'll save this, configure and submit it again. Okay, let's go back to the jobs. So this is the job that we are running now. Okay, so this job is also complete. So now if we look at the data or the evaluation result, it will be completely different. So this is basically what we are getting now. So this is what happens, based on, whatever algorithm that you're using, you'll get, different results. So to now use this in real time, what you have to do is there are a couple of things that has to be taken care before we make it, before we can deploy it and before we can use it in our REST API. So the first thing that you have to do is basically in any job, that you have built or that is running, or the latest job that is, there, you can open that. So let's do that. Let's go to the, let's click here. You can see under the assets, under the jobs, you can look at the experiment 101 that we created. And then you can open the latest one here. And if you look at this option here, which says create inference pipeline, click on this, make it real-time inference pipeline. Okay. And then submit it again. So configure and submit it again. So we can select the same experiment that we were running on. We can go to next, next, the same compute resource, next, and then submit. So the reason we made it, this way, so that it can add the web service input and the web service output. And this is what we are basically going to deploy it to our Azure Kubernetes services. And then we'll call this using our REST API. So I'm just waiting for the job to complete. Let's go to view details. All right, since this is running, what we have to do next is basically, okay, since the job is still running, what we'll do is basically create the Azure Kubernetes services which we'll use to deploy this model actually. So we'll go to, scroll down, we'll go to the compute service again, and we'll go to Kubernetes cluster. And here we'll create the Azure Kubernetes compute. Okay, so AKS machine. Oh, so this is the location. Sorry. So what we have to do is we go back. We can see the location is Central US. So we'll use the same location, which is Central US here. And then I'll go on with the same thing, which is provisioned here, or which is provided by default. I'll go on to next. The compute name would be AKS machine. And the cluster purpose is for dev and test. I'll reduce the number of nodes to 1, and the rest of things I'll keep it as is. I'll click on next, create. And for creating this AKS compute resource is going to take a lot of time. It could take almost 10 to 15 minutes. So I'll pause the video till then, and we'll come back once this compute resource is completed, and then we'll see how we can deploy it and how we can call it using an API, or how we can, we'll test it with a Postman tool to see how we can get the data in real time. Okay, so now our AKS, or the Azure Kubernetes service, has been provisioned. And now what we can do is basically deploy our model that we have built and see how we can use it in real time. So let's go back to the designer again, or let's go back to the jobs again. Okay, we got the experiment 101. Go to the latest one that we built, the real-time inference one. And now what you can do is basically you can look at the option here which says deploy, click on deploy, and then you can select the name. So you can mention it as machine learn 101 real time. Okay, AKS compute, and we can select the one which we just created or provisioned. Click on advanced. Let's not auto scale this, just keep one replicas and then deploy this. And now to see, the job or the deployment which is happening, you can go to the endpoints, and you can see, this is the deployment that is happening. But this is going to take another, some more time for the deployment to complete, and it could take around 10 to 15 minutes more. So we'll be back, once this deployment is complete. So our, deployment is complete, and now you can look at the deployment state, which is healthy. And this is where I'll just go back and show you. Basically, if we go to the container registry, and if we look at the repositories, this is, where it has been, deployed. So that's the reason, we created the registry in the, in the first place. So now let's go back to this. And to test it out, first thing you can do is basically, if you go back, let me show you. If you go to the endpoint here, go to this one, which we just created. And if you look at the test here, this will automatically give you some of the test data. And what you can do is, if you remove this completely, okay, and I'll remove the income bracket here, and then just click on test. So there you go. This is our real time, which is predicted, and you can see the scored labels here, and you can see I haven't, specified the income here and the probability, around here. So same way, what you can do is you can test it with your Postman tool. So let's take this example. See, let's open the Postman tool. So I'm going to create a new request. This is going to be a post request again. And to get the endpoint details, first let me do one thing. Let me go to the body. Let's go to the raw section. Let's make it as JSON and paste the data here. I'll change the value to, let's say, 40 or 60. Let's make that 60. We'll go back, and to get the details, you can go to consume here. This is the REST endpoint which you have to use. So you can copy this, paste it here, go to the header section, type authorization, make it error space, and then you can copy one of the keys, which is either the primary key or the secondary key. Paste it, and once you hit send, there you go. So this is what we get. This is the result that we are getting, which is the scored labels and the scored probabilities. So that's how you can basically, use your, deploy it on Azure Kubernetes services, and then you can use it in real time. And you can also see, we have our model here. This is our model, which we just, created. This, you can see this is the type as a custom. What is the source? This is basically available in this workspace, and the experiment which we used. So these are the details. Now, since we have tested everything, what we can do is basically, delete our resources so that we do not incur any charges. So let's go back. So you can see one more thing. Since my machine was idle for more than an hour, it has stopped automatically. So I can delete this first. Okay, so this is being deleted. And at the same time, I can go to the Kubernetes cluster and select this and hit. So once your both these resources are deleted, what you can do is basically navigate back to portal.azure.com and go to the home screen, go to all resources, you can see all the resources which is listed down here. And the best way is basically go to the resource group, which is going to be our machine learning 101. And you can click on delete resource group, copy this, copy the resource group name, paste it here, and then just hit delete. So this would ensure that, if you were following along and if you have created this, the resources, it won't incur any charges for you. I hope this video was helpful.